Good evening, you're welcome to GH1 Television, and this is News Tonight. It's about time we bring you major updates of issues that have occurred across the country and from other jurisdictions. So do stay with us. My name is Patrick Stevenson.
And I am Abena Owusu Nyamekye. Let's take a look at the headlines. NPP poised to shame its critics as Education Minister states emphatically that the free SHS will definitely kickstart in September despite the lack of a blueprint on funding sources.
Country view that the money that has been appropriated by the Parliament of Ghana is not enough can as well submit it to the President or us, and we will take due cognizance of it. But free SHS is happening September 2017.
And in our continuing series on persons with disability, we bring you a tech-savvy, visually impaired who refused to let his disability get in the way of enjoying his passion of being a DJ.
Because I don't really have any limitations.
The MPP is at it again. Chaos at Kumasi branch of the Metro Mass Transit as rival MPP youth clashed over the appointment of a manager.
And in business, the Institute for Fiscal Studies urges government to address decline in the growth of non-oil sector or suffer a huge setback. This and many other stories we have in tonight's bulletin.
Welcome to News Tonight, and some news just coming in. We understand a deportation flight has arrived at the Kotoka International Airport. The flight is actually from the United States of America. We're taking you live to the airport now, where my colleague Redwan Karim Osman Dini is standing by. Hello, Redwan. Tell us about these deportees.
All right, Abena, earlier we picked the information that the deportees were coming from the United States. We know that 2 batches have arrived in the country already, and so we got information that a 3rd batch was coming, but apparently this is not part of Donald Trump's crackdown on illegal immigrants in the United States. But of course, these are immigrants coming from Libya. We have quite a number of them, and we are actually coming to you live from the domestic arrival session of the Kotoka International Airport. The bus you see right on my left-hand side, you have a lot of them inside. We have a lot also in the building trying to undergo the processes to have their documents verified and all of that. But earlier I was engaging quite a number of them, and they talking their experience. Some were in prison for 5 months, I beg your pardon, and they told me that they were living in the prison under very bad conditions, and they are happy that finally they are in the country. I have been joined by a number of them, so we'll try and engage them for them to talk their experiences themselves. But right behind the arrival, you see quite a number of them also coming in from the arrival. There you see them in their pullover and their jackets, very bushy beard and mustache, all telling you that indeed these are people who were in detention, living under very deprived conditions back in Libya. So right away, let me engage the first person here. What's your name?
Prince Doku.
Which part of Ghana do you hail from?
I'm from Koforidua in the eastern region.
All right. And now tell us, why are you here? What was the experience back in Libya?
As for Libya, it's not easy. It's not easy. We were arrested and put into prison. Most of us, some of us died, some were sick. So many things happened. If I say I want to talk about what happened way back there, maybe I couldn't say it again.
Okay, you can't actually tell because it's painful.
Yes.
But how did you get to Libya?
I passed through land from Ghana to Togo, Togo to Benin, Benin to Niger, Niger to Libya, by the desert.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, so what has been the arrangements between you and the stakeholders? I know that the immigration people are here. We have the NADMO and other officials here. What have they been telling you?
Well, yeah, they have tried very well for us. And the Almighty God will bless them, will give them long life and prosperity. Because it's not easy. It's not easy. The arrangements from Libya to here, all of them were perfect.
Okay. But are your relatives aware that you are in town and you are coming home? Are they aware?
As for me, I just called my brother for the immigration office. I just called him once. And he was shocked because for Libya, almost 8 months in prison. None of them have been hearing from me, no phone call, nothing. And so...
All right, I can understand. And so you realize, Abena, that a lot of them getting emotional, and the story you just heard represent a lot, because it's similar to what I have heard earlier. A lot of them don't even know how they are going to contact their relatives because they came with nothing. They went to Libya through the desert with nothing, and they are back in the country, with nothing. They told me that in the attempt to get to Italy through the Mediterranean, that was when a lot of them were arrested. But let me speak to the final person. What's your name?
My name is Romel Sam from Takrady.
Oh, you are from Takrady in the western region. So tell us, how was it back in Libya or Ebadeka Fanta? Okay, now not then. Who experience war Libya not then?
Libya did. Alright, in the pa. Alright, Bebre Wolu Sudo. Bebre Sulu prison. Mad the prison 9 months. My bre Libya din nti mo so ma foto kakra mo wande munyu anom no ma biala nko Libya biem sisi oye ye na ye president na do dan ko akofado o hye mbode obi deport ya ya ba mpo so we deport ya ya ba sisi am brother ko o Libya sisi wo so ye lento ntum baby ye je ne wo sisi anti pray na metim mare won kwoten but ye bedru di omo se 1 week time ye be deport no so ma ba nti ya ware hye mde oye ye na okay.
Well, that's what from the
Nana Sam, another Romel Sam.
Okay. So you heard from Nana Sam, a deportee, also telling us that life back in Libya was very, very hard. It was a tough life, and he is happy that he's in the country, and he's happy that the president has actually lived to his commitment of bringing all the deportees back into the country. He said a lot of his relatives and colleagues are in Libya, and they are hoping that per the words of the government, all of them will be brought to the country so that they would work and contribute to the development of Ghana. So Abena, we just came to you from the domestic arrival session of the Kotoka International Airport. We are hoping that a lot of them will go through the process, after which the bus that you see behind me, which is the Kofour bus, we have about 4 or 3 of them here. They will be sent to Circle, I'm told, Kwame Nkrumah Circle. They will be given money, and of course a lot of them will make their way to their various destinations.
All right, Redwan, thank you very much coming to us live from the Kotoka International Airport. It's quite interesting, Patrick, but at least they are home. They'll be taken to Circle and then given transportation.
Oh, well, I mean, it still goes back to buttress the point that, you know, no matter how bad your country is, you still can find economic opportunities here. We're not saying it's the best, but I don't suspect somebody will be arresting you, for example, if you're trying to make a living, like most of the people we know from most of these areas, you know, around places like Circle and, you know, Tama Station and some other places. And so, yeah, Ghana may be terrible, but it's not so bad.
Going through the desert to Libya, it's just not worth it.
Very scary, very scary. We don't hope any more of the young people in this country will want to go through that journey.
We have insights coming up next.
And the Minister for Education, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, has stated emphatically that the free senior high school policy, which will be rolled out in September as planned. Critics claim the economy is not in the best shape to cushion the program, which will need an estimated 3.6 million Ghana cedis annually. Despite the funding concerns, government says it is poised to roll out the policy. What is more, it is looking to generate funds internally from it. William Evans Inkum chronicles the journey of this audacious policy.
It was the major campaign message by the New Patriotic Party in the build-up to the 2012 and 2016 general elections.
A competitive labor force, because we're going to give all the children of our country an opportunity to develop themselves by providing for every single child in our country free senior high school education.
The then ruling party, led by John Dramani Mahama, shut down the policy on the campaign trail. The NDC argued vehemently that it was not going to be sustainable because of the terrible economic conditions at the time. They then came in with the alternative to implement a progressive free senior high school. Many felt this had been taken right out of the NPP's manifesto, but the NDC went ahead anyway. The approach gave birth to some community-day senior high schools. But the unrelentless NPP came back stronger during the 2016 electioneering year, promising loftily that it would implement the free senior high school during its first year when voted for. And over the months since his swearing in, President Akufo-Addo has re-echoed his government commitment to implement the policy at every fora, though he was conspicuously silent on it when he met editors last week at the Flagstaff House. September was fixed as the commencement date for the flagship policy.
The government of Ghana will fund the cost of public senior high schools for all those who qualify for entry from the 2017-2018 academic year onwards.
The feasibility of the free SHS has received divergent views. Dissenting ones have dwelled on funding. For example, policy think tank Imani Ghana thought the policy might hit a snag because of a lack of a clear policy document about the timelines, source of funding, and scope of the policy, and particularly how to sustain it. It said, for example, exigencies from the various sectors of our economy might not allow the policy to work. Former GES Director General Charles Ahetochega, however, thought changes in the national budgetary expenditure might see the policy become a success. Senior Minister Yao Osafo-Mafo had earlier mentioned an amendment of the Petroleum Act to allow the use of the Heritage Fund to cater for the free SHS policy.
Look at the Heritage Fund. The heritage implies for the future, am I right? We want to introduce, and the President mentioned it last week, free fee education in the second cycle, that is the SS. And it is likely to be funded through the Petroleum Act.
This generated heated arguments about government eyes on that strategic monetary reserve, but over time the issue died out. Minister for Education, in an interaction with the press on Thursday, said the free SHS is kickstarting in September, will be funded by government. The government has allocated an amount of 400 million cedis for the implementation of the program in its 2017 budget.
Anybody who has any contrary view that the money that has been appropriated by the Parliament of Ghana is not enough can as well submit it to the President or us, and we will take due cognizance of it. But free SHS is happening September 2017.
But will internally generated fund be able to sustain the policy against the backdrop that some projects today have stalled because of lack of funds from the government? The Sofola Interchange project is a typical example. This government of Ghana funded project is yet to be completed after almost 10 years of commencement. William Evans Inkum, GH1 News, Accra.
Well, the lack of a clear funding path for this audacious program is not the only concern here. There are also issues to do with quality. But Minister for Education, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, promises that the government would intensify its monitoring and evaluation process to ensure that quality is not stifled because the program is free. Here's a report by William Evans Inkum.
It is no secret that a lot of people equate free with inferior. And this is one major concern as the government looks ahead to implement its free SHS policy. But the Minister for Education says the program will not entertain anything short of quality.
We want to provide teaching and learning materials as part of the quality issues. That is why I said for those who are going in this year, their textbook sets will be given. Those who are going to technical and vocational training, the technical and vocational training instruments would also be provided.
There was some criticism when it became clear the policy was to cater for students entering high school at the start of the 2017-2018 academic year. Critics said this direction was at variance with the manifesto promise of the NPP. Under the free SHS policy, beneficiaries will not have to pay admission fees, library fees, science center fees, no computer lab fees, no examination fees, and no utility fees, according to the government. Also, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh stated that Category A schools will reserve a compulsory 30% vacancy for candidates coming from less endowed areas in the country.
For our best schools in this country, and there are about 82 of them, 30% of their places would be reserved as a right to those from public schools across the Ghana.
The free SHS policy will also cover agriculture, vocational and technical institutions at the secondary school level. The Education Ministry is also planning to put up model schools. GH1 News sought to interrogate the move.
42 model schools. What then become of the projects that the NDC started? I'm talking about the community-based senior high schools, because already we know that there are a number of structures that are still sitting in some parts of the country that are actually yet to be occupied. So what becomes of those structures?
We will mend the old ones, we will continue with the old ones, and we'll do new ones. I don't think you are by any stretch saying that government should put all its money in. Actually, even the so-called day schools that were built, 43, 10 from World Bank, 43 from Ghana government, that were complete. We have to put the students in because they are not necessarily areas where people were going to school.
And so, aside just knowing that the policy is free by its name, Free Senior High School, we want to get to understand which form it would take, as presented by the Education Minister, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, earlier today. And Patrick Stevenson is standing by with the key highlights of his presentation. Patrick?
Thank you very much, Abena. And so, Free Senior High School, to fund or not to fund, to implement or not to implement, the conversation continues. But for those of you at home, what we have tried to do is to put a summary to the presentation that has been made by the Minister for Education, because a lot of stakeholders have been calling for some sort of a blueprint for the implementation of this policy come September. So before we go to the experts that we have who have been reviewing this alongside government, it's important to put in context what the Minister has just put across today. Now, the Free Senior High School policy conversation that we've been having, the conversation around funding, is supposed to cost 400 million cedis, and this was stated in the budget and the fiscal policy of government for 2017. Now, that is going to be funded through two main streams: the annual budget funding amount from petroleum funds, which is about 211 million Ghana cedis, and then finance, a part of that is going to be financed by government as well, which is at about 188.2 million Ghana cedis. And so that summary goes to the 400 million Ghana cedis that the budget mentioned. But what does the package itself entail? Free Senior High School, what is it about? And so this is also sort of a breakdown of what the minister put across today. It is going to remove all barriers as far as cost to senior high school education is concerned. There's going to be a physical expansion of school infrastructure, because as you know, once you make it free, there's going to be an increase in enrollment, and so we need to provide more infrastructure for students, and so it's going to cover that. There's an improvement in the quality of secondary education. That was equally highlighted by the minister. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure our experts will give us insights into that. Again, the policy highlights the fact that there has to be some level of equity, and then there'll be some acquisition of skills for employment. There, we're moving away from the formal system of education and looking at things like technical and vocational training institutes that will provide the youth some skill sets to be able to get themselves some jobs going. Who is eligible or who qualifies to benefit from this sort of a program that the government is going to put across? Well, if you're a Ghanaian student, you have to have qualified from the BEC education or the junior high school system. So if you don't pass, well, then it appears to suggest that you are not benefiting from that. We cannot give you freebies if you are not studying hard. Foreigners are excluded from the policy because the orientation really is to give Ghanaians or the Ghanaian youth an opportunity to have access to education, whilst also providing an opportunity for the training of the human capital of the country. Duration and funding for beneficiaries of the program is going to be for a 3-year period. And so if you get into senior high school come September, the entire 3 years that you are going to be in school, whether you're a boarder or you're a day student, well, the policy, as we understand now, will be covering you. In terms of equitable access, we know we have a conversation in this country where some schools are rated as grade A schools, others are not so well endowed. Well, the minister makes us understand that to ensure equitable access by way of transitioning from the junior high school to the senior high school system, 30% of places will be reserved for our asset were grade A schools, which he mentions are about 82. And so what percentage of fees is being absorbed by government? Well, if you're a day student, you're a first year student, 435 Ghana cedis is the total fees that you need to pay, and that is being absorbed by government. If you're a boarder, 438, that is being absorbed. In addition to that, you have all forms of recurrent fees that students pay to facilitate the teaching and learning business within our senior high school educational systems. Again, included in the package are feeding fees. The feeding fees, 4 Ghana cedis, 80 pesos for a boarder, and 1 hot meal for day students, which has been budgeted at 1 Ghana cedis, 60 pesos. I don't know if I can survive on that, but that's the provision that has been made by government, and we should be thankful for the little message that we get. And there's equally going to be subsidies for all continuing students who are in Form 2 and Form 3. What it presupposes is that for now, those that are going to be considered within the broad framework of the policy will be those getting into Form 1. But there are provisions made for those in Form 2 and Form 3. Let's go to our analyst and find out what they have to say about this. Abena, over to you.
With me in the studio is Kofi Asari. He's a member of the Ghana National Education Coalition campaign. Also on the phone lines is Franklin Kujo, the president of Imani Ghana. They had initially raised concerns about it. Let me begin with you, Mr. Kujo. You've asked questions about this program, and indeed, listening to the education minister, were you satisfied with the roadmap for the free SHS policy?
Well, good evening to you and good evening to Patrick and your guest. Well, first of all, we should be thankful that we are beginning to see the unfolding, if you like, of a policy that was originally seen to be complex. You know, one of the challenges this administration is going to have with some of its flagship programs is that they may not be able to define exactly what a blueprint should be for some of these flagship projects. I mean, free SHS has been around for quite some time now, and I'm mortified, really, to learn that every time the minister speaks, the goalposts shift. But all the same, like they say, it is only the unwise that doesn't want to change his or her position. So, as I said, I'm gratified, probably happy, that we are beginning to see the unfolding of a promise, however discordant it may sound. First of all, let's unpack a bit of it, really. First, you know, the manifesto promise, as well as the budgetary allocation for that promise, categorically stated that free basic universal education now will terminate at SHS, which ordinarily means that everybody will be taken care of. Then the next scene in this movie was that there's going to be a filter. There's the GSS certification, which was said in the budget to be only a tool for certification, but not necessarily access into SHS. would now be used. So that was the next one. Now we are hearing that there was going to be a very socialist way of recommending that those who may not necessarily pass and may not be liked by the grade A schools would have to be imposed on them, 30%. Now this is where I get very confused, because we were suggesting all along, the money has suggested, and I'm sure Patrick is aware because he was in the West, have suggested all along that if you can deploy a system that identifies those who can afford to pay, why don't you just utilize that same method in order to deploy this free SHS? Because eventually, if you can deploy a system that can identify those who might fail, and 30% of that would have to be imposed on the people, on schools that do not ordinarily wouldn't take these students, it seems to be that we are moving in, there's a backward and forward dance which is being done. And so as I've said, I am happy that we are here as a promise of hopes. We are beginning to see. So I see that there's a committee that has come out with this very flowery, solutions as we speak. But I think it will be useful to listen to the likes of Dr. Dokufo, who has spoken that we need to graduate this promise. I think it's important. There's no rush at all. And I'm hearing again that the subsistence students who initially were said that who were not to be taken care of will not be given some subsidy. Do we know the quantums of money is involved in this very, 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 very free approach to doing things?
Mr. Kojo, clearly there are more questions, but I would like you to hold on the line for us, and let's engage Kofi Asari here in the studio with us, the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. For you, listening to the minister, is this program feasible?
Well, thank you very much. Obviously, since the proposal was made in the MPP's manifesto to roll out a free senior high school policy, civil society did an extensive consultation on the issue, and then we issued a position paper to the extent that we recognize the fact that secondary education is increasingly becoming a right. And the number of dropouts that are experienced annually, averagely about 120,000 school children are not able to transit from junior high to senior high school, and this has been about a decade's trend. And we lose all of them to the informal sector. Some of them struggle to survive, and one of the reasons why they've always dropped out has been the issue of cost. So when we did our transition studies, we realized that average transition rate was less than 50%. And most of the people who fell out because of cost reasons. So a policy to make senior high school education free was obviously a welcome decision, except for the fact that we recognize that there were issues at the basic level. Since in 2005, the free compulsory universal basic education policy of the government, which was a constitutional mandate, was implemented, we realized that the quality deficits in basic education were occasioned by, among others, the delays in the payment of the capitation grant and how it affected the business of teaching and learning in schools. So guided by this and the fact that even though basic education was free, there were some hidden costs, and which we are all aware. We were quite cautious, in approaching the free senior high school policy. But in terms of the relevance of the policy, we were all certain that the policy was relevant, because if the nation had resources, and looking at the ways that had occasioned our system, we thought that it is better for us to protect our purse and then invest money that would have been wasted into viable expenditure, which is funding a free senior
But now
policy.
we know that, well, it is starting in September.
Yeah.
Listening to all the roadmap, everything that has been outlined, can government sustain this program?
Well, you see, at the beginning of every critical policy, such discourse take place. When FQ was starting in 2005, there were various opinions. When the National Health Insurance was starting, there were various, at the beginning of key critical projects like this, of such magnitude, they're talking about a policy that is giving education to about 360,000 people. It is a big policy, and it has a very, very big effect on the national purse. So there will always be varying schools of thought. One school of thought is saying that let's wait, there is no money. Let's think through the process so that we can fashion out a very smooth way of rolling out this policy. Another school of thought is saying, and that school of thought is the political school of thought from the opposite side of government, and also some people in government, and some CSOs. Also, NEC is saying that we are even interested in how the beginning is even skewed. Look at this is an interesting aspect. Whilst others are saying that we don't have enough money, that is the government that just exited, and that let's wait. Some CSOs are saying that, wow, this problem has been with us for a long time. So if we have an opportunity to nail it, then let's even expand access.
And now the conversation has moved on because the government is rolling it out anyway.
Exactly. So our concern necessarily is not necessarily about can government implement it or not. No, we've gone beyond that stage. At this point, the most important factor in this equation is the Ghanaian child. Is to ensure that those who were not able to afford secondary school education last year and in previous years will now have an opportunity to enroll. Last year, we enrolled about 293,000 students in senior high schools. But this year, per the projections I'm seeing, we are likely to enroll about 360,000 students, an increase of about 55,000 students. Okay, it means that we are making progress in expanding access. So we acknowledge that it is good in terms of expanding access and ensuring that the poor and marginalized who would have been excluded from senior high school education will now have the opportunity to access it. That is not to talk about the quality issues I mentioned earlier. But as we progress, we hope that you're going to engage the ministry and government for that matter and draw their attention to the quality issues or the factors that are likely to facilitate quality deficits in the system, especially and most importantly, the financing mechanism, the disbursement mechanism. Because unlike the capitation grant, where monies were used mainly to finance teaching and learning materials and other operational expenses in the school, this senior high school disbursement will go to fund, among others, feeding. So
which feeding grant has been a problem for some time now.
So you may delay capitation grant payments, and teachers will manage to teach for about a month or two. Sometimes the capitation grants are raised for about 3 months or even a term or 2 terms. But to what extent can the system we are now driving at, I mean the free senior high school policy, accommodate such persistent and protracted delays in the payment of
while checking that quality is not compromised?
Exactly. So that is one of the issues I think we should be discussing.
Interesting. Franklin Kojo is still on the line with us. Mr. Kojo, among some of the issues that Imani raised had to do with funding, and you looked at the state of the economy now. Government says that it will be fully funded by the government of Ghana. Can this be sustained?
Well, let me just make a little correction. You know, Imani never really said nothing is feasible. All we've always been saying is that we've been asking questions about prudency. I mean, if you had before a policy that was going to railroad almost everybody, in spite of the quality of the materials, into a scheme, and we are saying that, why would you not use a means testing approach, which has been used in other social interventions like Leap, for instance? Why don't you want to do that so that you can free up resources for other means? You see, the challenge is also about the sustainability of the scheme. You know, you now know the full length you are going to see the full extent of this promise when you've had a full set of students who would have been through school. My issue really has also been about the quality as well. You know, I find it a bit difficult to understand that in railroading everybody else, we may be compromising the issues of quality. But as has been discussed, we will be waiting to see. We are not saying that we are hoping it fails, and we are not waiting to say that, well, we'll be proven right or wrong. The fact of the matter is that there are means testing approach to doing some of these things all over the world. And that is what we have urged our governments to do.
All right.
The promise keeps evolving. It is becoming apparent that it is always better to take the road less traveled, which is one of prudency.
We'll see how it goes. Thank you very much, Franklin Kujo, with Imani. He's the president of Imani Ghana. And also in the studio with us was Kofi Asari. He's a member of the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. Let's go on Twitter now and hear what you've been saying. So we asked that government is poised to implement the free SHS policy this September. Do you think it is built to fail even before it takes off? And your responses on the screen now. 27% says yes, it's too audacious. 54% thinks no, the economy is prime for it. And 19% of you feel that the free SHS policy is not feasible at all. The beginning the program being rolled out this September, 19% of you think that it's not feasible. So those were your views that you shared with us on Twitter, and that ends Insight here on News Tonight. In other news, armed police personnel have taken over Metro Mass Transit Terminal in the Ashanti Regional Capital, Kumasi, following a near clash between supporters of two rival MPP groups. Ultimate FM's Isaac Bediako reports the rival supporters marched up at the Bantima Abripo Junction office of the MMT in an attempt to take over the operations. It took the timely intervention of the police to maintain calm in the area.
GH1 news sources say the ruling New Patriotic Party's Ashanti Regional Deputy Organizer, Daniel Ejenim Boaten, who claims to have been appointed to head the company, was set to start work Thursday, but that didn't happen following a confrontation by followers of one Nicholas Odro, who also claims to have been asked to head the transport company, allegedly by NPP campaign Dr. Amakutufo. The development resulted in a standoff at the Bantama Abripo Junction office of the MMT, which slowed down operations for hours. Deputy Organizer of the NPP in Ashanti Region, Daniel Boaten, explained to GH1 News why he stormed the bus terminal with his followers.
Members you've seen here, a cross-section of them, these are leaders of them. They are not here for violence. They are here in solidarity of what is happening. Somebody is trying to thwart my appointment. The police officers are here, and I think they will communicate to the national security and obviously to go to the presidency.
Meanwhile, sympathizers of Daniel Ejenim Boaten have vowed to resist attempts by faceless individuals in the party to change his appointment.
Yetu kokofuni mpanimfo bebree yempese bi besa esi asantemam ha biem nti ya hawo nyina ne se ye nyina ye ta da ne boaten ati se adwuma no onye no betima ye amanabro so Kufuado president masra ne pa se wo kasa no wo se data force fo ogu nanimu ase yempese bi besi biem enti won fe Nicholas na onko tena se anya se Nicholas si Metro Mass ha ebiemu besa esi yam prikura mani nwura mu ba kukura yewra Daniel Boaten woni ye ni na wo ye na dwuma ye ta na chie.
And moving on to timeline for tonight, having been widely used for hundreds of years, Braille has become the most conventional method of learning for the visually impaired. But in a world of fast-changing technology, have you ever thought of how the visually impaired is catching up, especially in the era of social media interactivity? GH1 News' Ridwan Karim Osman takes a look at this subject matter through the eyes of a gentleman who has defied several odds to keep his passion alive.
Touch, sight, smell, taste, and hearing are the 5 fundamental senses that help us explore and enjoy the world around us. However, some people are born blind and some without the ability to hear. But some learn to transcend this inability and enjoy heightened senses than other able-bodied persons with all 5 senses.
Okay, so still in the dancehall move. This is Shatawale.
Raphael Aite is one of such people. The aura around him is simply welcoming as he nurtures his career daily in this makeshift studio belonging to his boss, Omania Opara.
The one and only black man on radio, the Black Lion for short. We do it like nobody's business, you know. Remember, I anthem and I company with them and I joke, and we can't never ever joke on radio Rastafari.
Ralph is my second in command. That is assisting me at my studio here. I went to Kotoka Super Blind some 10 years ago, and I met them. They were doing music, and I saw that he was, capable of wearing my shoes.
Defending reggae, defending GH reggae dancehall.
The 29-year-old lost his vision when he was an infant and says life has never been the same, especially in a country where stigmatization against persons with disability is a major problem.
Like, we need to educate our people about persons with visual impairment and stuff, because it looks like people think if indeed you're visually impaired, then hey, Charlie, this guy, I mean, there's nothing, he can't do anything. You need to feed him, we need to clothe him, you need to bath. Come on, it doesn't work. I cook, I do whatever I want to do because I don't really have any limitations though. But how many people believe that? I love music.
Raphael is an academic, but music is his passion. He is a disc jockey with perfect pitch and an astonishing musical ability. Raphael's consummate skills on the console have endeared him to many radio listeners with the showbiz name Tuntum.
And that's my pop. Drop that. Oh my God, I love it.
So when the gun shot, always a echo. You don't know? Hear the road boy crack.
Raphael's passion for his job perhaps lays credence to the recent research which suggests that musical talent and vision impairment are closely linked. And this becomes more plausible if names of high-profile and brilliant blind musicians such as Ray Charles and Steve Wonder come into sharp focus.
I just called to say how much I care.
As our conversation with Raphael regarding his musical career got more interesting, we were unceremoniously interrupted by a phone call. And the moment of truth was soon here.
Oh, Doctor, I'll call you back. Hey, Ducky.
Over the last few years, something big has happened to the way the visually impaired communicates, though if you could see it happening, you may not have noticed it. Whether Instagram, Twitter, WhatsApp, or even Facebook, they are there 24/7.
Technology, we are not left out. We're doing far better than some of you, because Charlie, me, if you give me, if I have my PC right now, and I go on my Facebook wall and stuff, I do whatever I want to do. You post, I post. That's all.
I comment, you comment as well.
Exactly.
Did you also know that the visually impaired people care about the aesthetics and the quality of photos they share on social media? So I ask, how does the blind see?
Well, I take my picture, I just rename the picture. Okay. I'll just rename the picture, maybe picture 1, picture 2 or something. So I type the name of the picture and I'll just go and upload it there. That's all.
But how do you know the picture is well taken?
Oh, okay. I have a software. It's known as TapTapC. Okay, so if I take the picture, it will describe it. Okay, it's a man wearing blah blah blah. It's a man standing beside this, wearing this, doing this, blah blah blah. It happens. I mean, it describes it.
No. Undoubtedly, social media and phone calls are important for all facets of.
Now, the story doesn't always have to be a sad one, does it?
Indeed, this is quite inspiring and refreshing.
One. Right.
Yeah.
And so we're bringing you the full story about this particular gentleman and then some other developments around persons with disabilities in the course of the week. We take a quick break here. We'll be right back.
Crucial decisions are made every second that affects you directly, but you can only feel it at the macro level, and that is why your community is important. How do these decisions shape development in your community? Is your community on our radar? At GH1 TV, nothing escapes our lenses: the good, the bad, and the ugly. On Our Radar captures it all. Every Monday at 7 p.m. News Tonight. On Our Radar, your community, our interest. GH1 News, news you can trust.
You're welcome back to News Tonight. It's time for us to bring you some international news. Now, a Malaysian lawmaker has come under fire for saying that women denying sex to their husbands was a form of psychological and emotional abuse. Now, from the ruling, Barisan National Coalition was addressing a domestic violence debate during a parliamentary session. Malaysia is in talks to amend existing laws against domestic violence. Now, the 58-year-old politician said men suffered emotional rather than physical abuse. All right.
Now that's an interesting one. We'll see how that pans out. Moving on to other issues in business. Koku, what do you have for us? What's been happening on the business?
Well, I will touch on something trending and then I'll come into the details of the stories that I have. I'm sure by now you're aware that the ADB boss or MD for ADB, Daniel Asiedu, has exited. Well done. I had a personal conversation with him this evening he looked upbeat, but he said, Kweku, I'd have to exit the office for the new person to come in or take over from Monday. So that is something by way of information that I got, Abena and Patrick. We'll move on straight to the details of the stories that we have in business, and it's the IFS talking about the mid-year budget review. We'll bring you updates on this and many other interesting details. So let's take our very first story tonight. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has cautioned Ghana's economy could suffer major setbacks if government does not take steps to address the decline in growth in the non-oil sector. While addressing the media ahead of the 2017 mid-year budget review on Monday, the director of IFS, that's the executive director, Professor Newman Kusi, said growth is tailored towards the non-oil sector, and this threatens the development of the economy.
The executive director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, Professor Nyamekye, also expressed concerns about revenue generation targets, saying this is largely affecting government's ability to pay valid arrears and invest in infrastructural developments for the first half of this year, thus impacting heavily on economic growth in the non-oil sector.
There's no way by which the government is going to be able to raise 45 billion in revenue this year, given the rate of growth of the non-oil sector of the economy. So that now reversing down means that the fiscal deficit, target of 6.5% also will have to be revised upwards, because the revenues are not coming in.
The IFS, however, described as encouraging the government's efforts in achieving economic stability in the first half of the year, praising government on the declining inflation rate, which is at 12.1%, increased oil exploration activities as well as increased export, among other initiatives undertaken in the first half of 2017.
All right, so later tonight we would want to spend more time on this particular subject, looking at the mid-year budget review from the perspective of the IFS. We'll be having Professor Nyamekye joining us with every bit of those details. But we'll take another story at this point. Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Robert Ahomka-Lindsay, says 80 companies have so far qualified to receive support under government's $50 million National Industrialization Revitalization Program. Well, the companies, according to the Deputy Minister, were selected from more than 350 distressed viable businesses who submitted applications to the Ministry of Trade and Industry.
The National Industrialization Revitalization Program, according to the Trade Ministry, is expected to address the various challenges that the private sector had faced over the last few years. High cost of borrowing and exchange rate volatilities, among others, adversely impacted the performance of the private sector. Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Robert Ahomka-Lindsay, expressed the hope that the qualified companies would be able to improve their performance with the industrial stimulus package.
The industrial stimulus package for Ghanaian industry seeks to do one thing only, very simply. We know there are businesses here that are economically viable but distressed. And so the process we have followed, we've had over 350 businesses that have applied, including members from this chamber, which we're very pleased at. And we've gone through a series of analysis. The President himself in his recent speech made that very clear. And we've whittled down from the 350 odd companies to a total of 80 companies that have qualified as we speak today for the stimulus package.
To help transform the Ghanaian economy. Something detailed has been given by Honorable Ahomka-Lindsay, but something else would also be...
All right, so that's about all we have for you in business tonight. But today's a Thursday, so we'll get you more updates on the mid-year budget review. For now, we'll hand over to the team to bring you some more updates from our world of sports.
Kweku, that was interesting. 350 businesses were supporting how many? 80?
80 out of it.
What happens to the 200 plus?
But maybe the proposal they put together was not too good.
Anyway, and so moving on to sports, CAF Vice President Kwesi Nyantakyi has said that Ghanaians shouldn't be surprised about the changes done in the AFCON tournament. Kwesi Nyantakyi, speaking to Kasapa Sports, said that the football enthusiasts shouldn't be surprised about the changes of the biggest football tournament on the African soil. And moving on to sports issues within the local league, convalescing Asante Kotoko head coach Steve Pollack and the team manager Godwin Ablode visited the team's Adakujachi training grounds on Wednesday afternoon. The duo suffered several injuries after the team bus rammed into a stationary vehicle on the Kumasi Nkoko Road on their return from Accra, where they played inter-allies in a league match. The fatal crash claimed the life of the team's deputy manager. We still have the weather brief coming up.
is brought to you by Fly for a pest-free life.
Enough. Abba. Plenty medical bills. I have tried different methods and it hasn't prevented thing. My son has been in the hospital twice this year because of malaria. I haven't had a good night's sleep in years. But now no more. Since I painted with Fly insecticide paint. Copy.
Fly insecticide paint kills mosquitoes dead for up to 2 years. It is a quality paint, a healthier option, and it's totally safe for humans and pets.
Take my word for it. Paint malaria out. Use Fly insecticide paint now.
Fly for a pest-free life.
Charlie, last month I taught mommy how to use Facebook. So it means she can stay in touch, even when she doesn't have credit on Facebook Flex. Big mistake, Charlie.
No credit is no problem. With Facebook Flex on Airtel, you can still use Facebook for free even without credit. Chat, post, share, and more for free with Facebook Flex.
Switch to Airtel now. Airtel, the smartphone network.
You're welcome back. It's time for us to bring you some entertainment news on eZone.
eZone is proudly brought to you by Airtel.
It's your boy Easy.
Talented Nigerian Afrobeat artist Mr. Easy is the first African to be added on Apple Music's latest Up Next. Up Next is a music series aimed at celebrating emerging artists from all around the world. The streaming service will promote his songs on its playlist and on the iTunes store. eZone caught up with Mr. Easy, and this is what he had to say.
Yes, your boy Mr. Easy. You know, I'm just like, I just feel blessed, humble, feel grateful to my fans and my team. You know, this is crazy. You know, I just feel blessed basically to be on this program, and for me it's like a challenge to do more work, because like when you get picked as Up Next artist worldwide, like you just gotta work and make sure that at the end of the day, 6 months down the line, you know, it makes sense.
The leg-over hitmaker who pioneered Banku music, a fusion sound he describes as a mixture of Ghanaian bounces, Ghanaian high life, Nigerian chord progressions, and Nigerian patterns, brought his unique sound to CBS's The Late Late Show, hosted by English comedian James Corden, as part of the package, which also includes a documentary. He follows other standout performances by fellow Up Next artists like Khalid, Sigrid, and Black.
Please welcome Apple Music's Up Next artist, Mr. Easy!
It's your boy. Listen, my baby they confuse me with the baba. But she get a guy where they send her money from London. Say, she they see me like a Johnny Jasper. When my kid they walking, baboon just the chop. Say, but I go chop body washing as long as you give me my passion. Baby, make you never rush me. I beg you, make you treat me with caution. My baby, give me like.
eZone was proudly brought to you by Airtel.
Home because there's something I made double back. Number the Dama Comas son.
Stella Bonzi is a vegetable seller in Accra who lost Amma, her 2-year-old daughter, to malaria. She rushed her to hospital when she developed a high temperature with vomiting. Unfortunately, Amma convulsed, fell into a coma, and died.
Malaria is the #1 cause of death in this country.
All too soon, we have come to the end of tonight's bulletin. We'll keep you updated tomorrow as well with developments across the country and from other jurisdictions. This has been Patrick Stevenson.
And I am Abena Owusu. Nyamekye is up next with a business edition of State of Affairs. Do stay.